family, 18 people, meal for Thanksgiving. We have a budget. We figured out what it's going to cost. Now, the president, he's reminding folks at every turn that the price of that meal will be less than the peak of the Biden administration.
Prices are coming down very substantially on groceries and things. They're already at a much lower level than they were with the last administration.
So we're starting to see a shift of more affordability announcements. The president speaking at a summit with McDonald's owners and operators, the president's message, how he's working to get prices down.
An NYPD officer was shot in Brooklyn early this morning following a shootout with a homicide suspect. Officials say the shooting occurred in Brownsville neighborhood of Brooklyn, where officers were informed of an unidentified individual shooting and killing a man. 2 officers were guarding the scene when shots were fired, leading to 25-year-old Sharhil Waris being shot with what NYPD Commissioner Jessica Tisch described as birdshot pellets from a shotgun. She says the officer is now in stable condition.
Officer Waris is a 4-year veteran of the NYPD assigned to the 7-3 precinct. We met with him a few moments ago, and I am pleased to report that he is in good spirits.
A border enforcement advocate says it is clear that the Trump administration is sending a message to Charlotte, North Carolina, that it is not playing when it comes to rounding up criminal illegal aliens in the city.
Charlotte is the latest city to see a crackdown on illegal immigration by U.S. Customs and Border Protection agents. Mecklenburg County Sheriff Gary McFadden said in a statement the 2 federal officials confirmed a plan for U.S. Customs and Border Protection agents to start an enforcement operation. Charlotte is another Democrat stronghold, and officials have estimated the city is home to more than 150,000 foreign-born people. Hannah Davis is investigations manager for the Federation for American Immigration Reform, who is from North Carolina.
It's interesting when the administration sometimes shows its hands, but I think it's also trying to display to the American public, to the news media, the outlets, that, hey, we're not playing. Self-deportations are on a rise, and forced deportations are too, and we're coming to a city near you. And so I think been kind of quiet with the government shutdown, and one of the first things they said once it reopened was that, hey, ICE operations aren't quiet, though. We're going to keep doing this.
And Davis says this is not the first time the feds have visited the city.
Just a couple months ago, over the summer, ICE did a small raid. There wasn't a lot of media presence about it, but it happened in Charlotte, and they arrested 24 criminal illegal aliens, 2 of which were MS-13 gang members. 6 of the 24 that they arrested had active detainers that the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Sheriff's Office refused to honor. And so it's an ongoing issue, and the only way to nip it in the bud is to put ICE's presence there permanently for a while.
I'm Chad Groening.
And finally, you will definitely not be alone next week if you travel for the Thanksgiving holiday.
AAA projects nearly 82 million people plan to travel at least 50 miles from home from Tuesday, November 25th to Monday, December 1st. At least 73 million people will travel by car over the Thanksgiving holiday weekend, and just over 6 million people will fly, making it the single busiest travel holiday. If you need to rent a car, AAA's rental partner Hertz says Wednesday is expected to be the busiest pickup day. The top 5 markets with the highest demand are Orlando, Atlanta, Las Vegas, Los Angeles, and Newark, New Jersey. Adding car rentals are 15% cheaper this Thanksgiving compared to last year. CJ Papa, Fox News.
More news online at afn.net and on the AFN mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
Hello, I'm Steve Crampton, Assistant General Counsel for the American Family Association. The mission of AFA is to inform, equip, and activate individuals to strengthen the moral foundations of American culture and give aid to the church here and abroad in its task of fulfilling the Great Commission. Our vision is to be a leading organization in biblical worldview training in the interest of cultural transformation.
Thank you for standing with the American Family Association. We inform.
Religious freedom is about people of faith being able to live out their faith, live out their convictions, no matter where they are.
We equip.
Sacred honor is the courage to speak truth, to live out your free speech.
We also rejoice in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio.
Welcome to The Core here on American Family Radio. Glad to have you with us on this brand new edition of At the Core. AFR.net is our website. AFR.net is the URL. You can find us on the World Wide Web. You know, I don't hear many people talking about the World Wide Web anymore. They just call it the internet, Bobby. But for a long time, it was the World Wide Web, was it not?
It takes too long. Just doesn't roll off the tongue there.
It doesn't. It takes an extra 3 seconds of your life.
Why are you dogging me, bro?
As opposed, no, I agree with you. Time is of the essence, Bobby.
Amen.
No, internet has become the norm, but we're still putting the www dot before the URL.
Unless it's a secure site, then you can.
Just put the URL.
Put the S, you got to remember that, colon.
HTTPS.
Is that a forward double slash?
Yeah, I always mess that up. Yeah, that's a good point. You know what really irks me, Bobby? And you talk about chasing rabbits. We're not even 30 seconds in. We're chasing rabbits. What really irks me is the fact that I have to press all the buttons on the when I do my debit card, when I check out, I've got to answer 7 questions. Is this amount correct? Is this a debit or credit card? What's your PIN number? Give me your area code. Give me your zip code. And before you know it, I've been standing there at the register for 5 minutes doing the little keypad.
Yeah.
Do you want cash back? Yes or no?
Yes. Yeah. Why is that?
I don't know. I just want to swipe and be done with it.
I know it.
Just swipe it, maybe put in my PIN, be done with it. But if you use a credit card, you don't need a PIN.
That's true.
So why do I need a PIN on a debit? I can run it as a credit and not use my PIN. See?
It's a good call.
So you can't say, it's for security reasons, Yeah.
Yeah.
So one day we're going to get there. One day I can just walk by.
I don't remember. Can you get the cash back on a credit card? I don't think they let you do that.
I don't think so. Maybe on some.
Maybe that's why.
Yeah.
You got to have the PIN.
Maybe. But it's just we've gotten so
money
efficient.
From your wife and stuff. Lexi probably doesn't like that.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah.
That's something.
But let's don't talk about that. No, it's life's gotten so efficient and everything's about saving time. But when you pull that card out to check out, it's a solid 2-minute process, and it's kind of painful to be honest with you. And it's the same thing every time, So maybe we'll get there.
They'd have some kind of database on that.
Yeah, it's probably regulatory related, or there's probably lawyers involved if it takes time.
Well, there you go. So you got to pay them some.
Yeah,
pennies
we'll just throw them under the bus. Yeah. All right, let's on to more productive things. John chapter 3 is where we are this week. John chapter 3, looking at verses 1 through 3. Well, let's look at verse 5. So the context here is Jesus is talking to Nicodemus, a Pharisee, ruler of the Jews, as he's described as well in John chapter 3. And they are talking about what does it mean to be born again? And so Nicodemus says to Jesus, how can a man be born again when he is old? Can he enter a second time into the mother's womb and be born? Jesus answered, most assuredly, I say to you, unless one is born of water and of the Spirit, he cannot enter the kingdom of God. That which is born of the flesh is flesh, and that which is born of the Spirit is spirit. And so this is where Jesus is expounding on the concept, on the truth of being born of the Holy Spirit, and the fact that it is not a fleshly birth or a human, if you will, birth that takes place, the second birth. It is the birth of the Holy Spirit and being baptized of the Holy Spirit, if you will. And so it's just so amazing to me the depth of conversations that Jesus consistently had with people and with the disciples. And every chapter, every verse, there's something to be taken from it and applied to our lives. And with this one, remember the context here, because you and I read this and we go, yeah, of course the Holy Spirit, right? Because it's something we've been taught in this New Testament church. But in this context, in this setting, this was a foreign concept amongst Jews. I mean, this is unheard of. What do you mean with the Spirit? What do you mean, being born of the Spirit? And so as believers, we have to put ourselves in the shoes of the people, the audience that's being addressed here, and understand that these concepts were not, 2,000-year-old concepts. These were relatively new concepts amongst the early church. And so when it takes, some of the disciples a little while to get on board and to comprehend what's going on here with the Messiah, we have to understand that, because it was this entire Jewish culture and this, religious culture and this law-driven culture that was being uprooted and that was being, offered an alternative. That alternative is Jesus. And so that's John chapter 3, looking at verses basically 1 through 5 there. All right, let's turn our attention to some of the news stories before we end this segment. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, they are launching a pretty broad operation to perform safety checks, wellness checks on the nearly 500,000 unaccompanied minors that crossed the southern border under the Biden administration. This is a human tragedy, and this is just one of multiple consequences of having no border security. Is the human cost is just outrageous, and it's staggering. And remember, this is the truth. The truth is that having a porous border, facilitating and allowing the mass human smuggling operation on the southern border is in and of itself is a very inhumane thing to do. And that's the narrative you're not going to get from the media and the Democrats. What you're going to get from them is that, these people are looking for a better life. And they're talking about the drug dealers and the human smugglers and the sex traffickers. They're looking for a better life. They're looking for a hand up. And they give you all these, these heart-tugging talking points about how it's charitable and generous and kind to allow people into our country illegally. Folks, it's not. It's horrific. It's sinful. It's wrong. It's evil to allow our border to be used for these evil things. And that's what happened under Joe Biden. So it's not charity. It's not kind. It's not loving to not have law and order. It's unkind. It's unjust. And it's unloving to not have law and order. So that's the counter. That's the truth that you need to hear. And so let's listen to this Fox report, about a 2-minute report on how ICE is about to do wellness checks on some 400,000 children. Clip 1.
Fox News alert, ICE announcing a brand new operation to conduct welfare checks on the 450,000 children that the Biden administration placed with unvetted sponsors, some of whom were sex traffickers, gang members, and abusers. The Trump administration has already located more than 24,400 children, and some of these stories are absolutely heartbreaking, like this one. A 1-year-old unaccompanied minor crossed the border during the Obama administration. That little girl is now 12 years old. During her 11 years in America, she lived with a series of relatives and endured horrifying abuse. According to Fox's Brooke Taylor, she was found in the custody of 2 sisters who have now been arrested. The 12-year-old was found, quote, with injuries all over her body, extreme malnutrition, and an infected gash on her head and zip ties around her wrist. Among those who abused this innocent child were her one-time sponsor, a distant uncle that she was placed with in 2024, despite being an illegal immigrant with a criminal conviction. That sponsor, that alleged abuser, was given temporary protected status by the Biden administration. Why? Here is video that Brooke Taylor obtained of the Trump administration arresting that man just yesterday. This is just one of the nearly 500,000 children that the Trump administration is seeking to protect. And this operation comes after the administration announced that Operation Dirtbag, conducted in partnership with the state of Florida, resulted in the arrest of 230 criminal illegal immigrants, including 150 sexual predators. Here was Deputy ICE Director Madison Sheehan announcing that development.
In just 10 days, we've been able to remove, in partnership with the state of Florida, over 230 of the worst heinous criminals from their streets. Our job as law enforcement is to protect the most vulnerable. Democrats will tell you that that is the criminal illegal aliens who they have let run free in our communities, but not this group of law enforcement. We know that it's the children that is our job to protect.
Operation, she's highlighting a couple operations that have already taken place, but this new operation is to conduct welfare checks on some 400,000 children. And they've only been able to make contact with about 25,000, according to Fox here, assuming their numbers are correct. 25,000 of those 400,000 kids. This is astonishing. I mean, you talk about a mass human smuggling operation. And by the way, our federal government aided and abetted this. It's a fact, okay? Now, you can say, well, they were just conducting, regular protocol on these illegal immigrants. No, there's nothing regular about this. There's nothing normal about this. When you allow this many people into our country and then you facilitate the transportation of the human smugglers, the sex traffickers, and all of their victims, and you fly them into the homeland or bus them, whichever way they did both ways, and then they're driving them to these major metropolitan areas that are known human trafficking rings: Atlanta, Detroit, Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York City, Chicago. These are all hubs for human trafficking. And what was Biden's Customs and Border Patrol doing? They were smuggling them in to these major hubs of human trafficking. And then we find out that the kids are being trafficked, and all of a sudden we're shocked about it. I mean, this is borderline criminal. I just don't understand how you can do this and get away with it. And this is the consequence of lawlessness. And this is what makes the Democrats more dangerous than maybe others, is that they have no sense of law and order. They have no respect for justice, for true justice. All of their justice is upside down. And Jesus actually warns about people who don't know the true definition of justice. They think they're doing something virtuous. They think they're doing the right thing, when in actuality, they're not. But this all happened under Joe Biden. And now we have hundreds of thousands of kids that were smuggled into America. And the Biden administration placed them with these so-called sponsors. And now we don't know exactly where they are and what their status is, what their welfare is. And in many instances, these children were placed with abusers, with people who were not fit to take care of these children. And they definitely weren't even their parents. And this is another thing, is they talk about when you conduct mass deportations, you're going to separate families. Well, number one, no, we're not, because you can keep the family together. You deport the whole family. All right, that's the answer. The answer is not to leave everybody here. The answer is to send the whole family back to where they came from. All right, that's the actual compassionate thing to do, keep the family together. But I would say in the majority of these instances, they're not even with their parents. They might be with their aunt, their uncle, their third cousin. They're not with their parents here. So that's another false narrative here, is this, well, you're tearing apart families. Well, that's operating under the assumption that these unaccompanied minors are with their mom and dad in America. When in many of these instances, that's not even true. Their parents may not even be in America. They may be back in their home, in their host country, their home country. And so there's a lot of these false narratives, these kind of heart-tugging narratives out there, of which many of them are not supported by facts. And so that's why we just can't argue and debate on a premise that is just fundamentally not true. But that's what the media and the Democrats do. We'll be back.
For that man ought not to expect that he will receive anything from the Lord, being a double-minded man, unstable in all his ways. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. The Apostle James introduces us to the notion of a double-minded man as one who doubts whether God can grant the wisdom necessary to successfully navigate and overcome trials. The one who remains steadfast, unwavering in their confidence in God, in the face of adversity, is able to rejoice in the midst of trials because of the faith produced by intimate communion with God and full persuasion of his unyielding goodness. The unstable man is double-minded as to whether God remains trustworthy at all times and in all seasons.
Listen each weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. Central for the Hamilton Corner, or visit the podcast page at afr.net for more from Abraham Hamilton III, Public Policy Analyst for the American Family Association.
Without even seeing them show up, I could feel like the darkness.
Jamie Sanchez is another Christian business proprietor who has been targeted for his faith. His Drip Cafe was opened to serve and help the homeless of downtown Denver.
We believe sex outside of marriage and homosexuality is a sin in God's eyes. And the enemy and his minions decided to use that as a platform.
Jesus told us persecution would come.
I would see them, just the rage and the hate. I pictured them doing that at the foot of the cross to Jesus. And I just remembered what he said, "Forgive them, Father, they know not what they do." And so I had to position my heart that way.
The Jamie Sanchez story is one of the videos of the Impact series at stream.afa.net.
It's been a crazy, crazy ride.
See Jamie's story and much more at stream.afa.net.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildmon, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. Hey, 2026 is your year to go with us on one of our Christian Heritage Tours. We've got some dynamite tours lined up for 2026. We're going to Colonial Williamsburg, Jamestown, and Yorktown. We're also going to Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, and we'll see George Washington's Mount Vernon estate while we're there, too. And then we're going to Boston and to Concord and to Lexington, all the history in Boston. We'll also be meeting with a couple of our founding fathers. The D.C. and Williamsburg tours are in June and September, and the Boston tour is in September. So if you want to go with us, you want to see the pricing, the itinerary, everything, go to wildmongroup.com. WILDMON group.com, wildmongroup.com, and we hope to see you on one of our 2026 tours.
At the Core podcasts are available at afr.net. Now, back to At the Core on American Family Radio.
Welcome back to the program. Second segment now underway. afr.net is our URL. You can also catch the live audio stream over on the AFR app and subscribe to the podcast there as well. Well, I want to move to our next guest. Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost is with us to talk age verification for children and protecting young people, specifically minors, on the age and the era of the internet and all these sites and applications, etc. Attorney General, welcome to the program.
It's good to be with you.
Attorney General, I want to ask you, you've been in this fight over protecting children for a long time now. I've looked a little bit at kind of your litigation history as Attorney General on this front, and so it's not a new issue for you, but for our audience, give them kind of an overview, a high-level view of the need to protect children on the internet with all these hundreds of sites and social media sites and all of our young people having a smartphone or a tablet in their hand. Just give kind of the perspective from a law enforcement officer on the need to protect children.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I suspect a lot of your audience has never been on one of these sites. So you go on and there's just video after video after video of not just nudity, but sex acts and all sorts of stuff that we put under the broad rubric of child sexual abuse material. Literally is sometimes a video of an actual assault, an actual crime that has been uploaded and is being viewed by other people for their prurient interest. The reason this has gotten so big is a couplefold. One is we increasingly are seeing young people, as young as middle school, but middle school and high school, they're learning about human sexuality by watching some of the most degrading material that you could possibly imagine, or maybe you couldn't even imagine. That's not a healthy way to grow up. Secondly, the sheer volume of these things and the fact that there is this subset of actual crimes that are behind them is increasingly worrying. We have, in many ways in America, laws that protect kids that are under 18. And what this law in Ohio does is it's designed to protect children from matters that they shouldn't be paying attention to. They shouldn't be seeing depictions of. It at a very simple level imposes a duty on these platforms to get some actual age verification, something other than just an honor system of, yeah, I'm 18, sure. Um, a driver's license, some kind of transactional data that verifies that there's an adult on the other end of this, not a child. And if you think about it, we already do this with, you can't rent a car before you're 18 or sometimes 21. You can't get a tattoo without parental permission. You can't buy cannabis or alcohol or marijuana. You can't even enter into a legally binding contract until you're 18. I don't think it's asking too much for these porn merchants to have a business model that checks whether their users are actually adults.
Once again, we're talking to Ohio Attorney General Dave Yost about age verification and child sexual abuse material, which are two separate areas of the law, but have similarities as far as the need to address them. The law that we're talking about here is in Ohio, Parental Notification by Social Media Operators Act. And Attorney General, this is obviously a newer law, and you're currently in the process of checking these adult-rated websites, these pornographic websites, and verifying which of them are in compliance with Ohio's state law. Give us a little update on the progress on that front.
Okay. Well, the law went into effect on September 30th. So the next week, we had some of our teams around Ohio log on to these sites and see whether there was any actual robust age verification. We just took the top 30 to see what we would find, and what we found was widespread noncompliance. We issued cease and desist letters, which we're required to do under the law. They've got a 45-day cure period, which depends on when we got the letter served, when that period expires. But over the next 30 days or so, we will have their answers back and then be able to take our next steps.
Yeah, that's very important. The problem in the past, Attorney General, and you're very familiar with this more than I am, is a lack of an enforcement mechanism. In the past, some states have done these type pieces of legislation, but the enforcement mechanisms are just very weak or non-existent in some cases. And so to your point earlier, it basically is this honor system, kind of check this box. Yes, I've read the terms of use and then move forward. But these laws that are being passed more recently, for example, in Ohio, it actually has teeth to it. And so kind of break down this process, right? You've obviously served letters to various websites that are not in compliance with the state law. Where does it go from there? Is it more of a civil liability issue? Are there actual criminal statutes involved here? How does this process play out for continual noncompliance?
So first of all, there is a civil process that my office has, and we are already, a couple of steps down the road on that process. There's also a private cause of action because, let's face it, this is a massive industry. There's a massive number of players out there. And the idea that one government office in Ohio is going to be able to police the entire internet is just not reasonable. But for a minor who is harmed by this, in other words, the age verification was not present, through that minor's parents, they can do a private enforcement action as well and seek damages.
Yeah, that's very helpful to put this in the hands of parents as well, along with your office. But to have kind of both avenues really bolsters the effectiveness of the legislation. Attorney General, thank you so much for coming on the program and for defending the law in Ohio. Obviously, that's the core function of your office, but not all attorneys general take this as serious as you do. So we appreciate your work and for protecting minors in Ohio, and ultimately, it'll protect kids all over the country.
Thanks for your interest. We'll talk again, I hope.
Absolutely. That's Attorney General Yost from the state of Ohio, Dave Yost, and we're talking child sexual abuse material and age verification. And as he described there, this problem is rampant when you begin looking into this, and it's actually a pretty disturbing topic to have to study and work on. So I'm cognizant of that for the folks that have to do this every day. It's a tough job, especially in law enforcement. But the problem is rampant, and it's not that these websites lack the capabilities to enforce age verification. It's just a matter of will and priority. And when you don't have an incentive, when you don't have a priority, then it doesn't work, and the websites do not prioritize it. And so this age verification legislation, which we've now got on the books in multiple states, it helps to protect children. It's a fact. And it's true age verification. It has teeth to it. And you have to enter basically a government-issued ID before you can view these adult-rated websites. And so this is part of our overarching effort to ultimately end pornography altogether. Pornography has obviously been a problem for a long time. This is an issue that my grandfather fought. At the time, my grandfather fought it initially on convenience store shelves and the corner adult-rated store where they had, VHS tapes and magazines. So that was kind of the initial fight that my grandfather waged back in the late 70s and the 80s. But now with the era of the internet, this is a whole nother kind of level of fight that we have to wage. And we're making a lot of headway here. I talked to you about the headway we made with Apple Corporation on protecting children on Apple devices. That was a major development. But this is a fight that has to be waged. And when you look at the epidemic of pornography and the damage that pornography does, not just to children, but also to adults, this shouldn't be allowed, folks. This shouldn't be allowed. And the argument, the First Amendment argument doesn't even hold water. When you begin studying the true original intent of America's First Amendment in the Bill of Rights, the argument that pornography, that explicit material is covered under the First Amendment just doesn't hold water. So maybe the Supreme Court will take that up. I think they should. But this stuff should not be protected. It's not speech. It's explicit conduct that shouldn't be publicly available. And so that's a whole nother argument. Maybe we'll have on one of our attorneys to talk about that, which is an interesting discussion. But at a minimum, we've got to start at protecting the children, because before we can ever outlaw pornography, you have to begin by protecting children. You have to target what's basically the low-hanging fruit, and that is protecting young people, because it's a very indefensible position for anyone to make, including the porn industry, to make a case that kids have to have access to this horrendous stuff. Who wants to make that case? Please let me know, because I'm not hearing it. Nobody wants to make that position because it's an indefensible, disgusting, immoral position. And so what we're doing here is we're targeting the protection of children. And once you start that conversation, the logical place that this ends is that this is harmful for everybody. It's not just harmful for children. Pornography is harmful for everybody. And the thing is there's also victims on both ends. There's victims. Pornography itself, the production of pornographic material itself, without any consumers, creates a victim. And then the end user is a victim as well. And so you got multiple victims throughout the process. And it should be outlawed, point blank. It should be outlawed. And so that's what we're working on, first and foremost, starting with the protection of children and through these age verification bills. And by the way, these have been held up thus far in the courts, held up at the Supreme Court. And Texas has a pretty strong one on the books. Louisiana has a pretty strong one on the books. Mississippi has. Ohio has a pretty strong one on the books. And so these are continuing to spread throughout the states. And the private cause of action is the way to go. This is the way to go. This is how big tobacco was defeated. Private cause of action. And the liability angle here is very effective, because every industry has some sort, unless you're the pharmaceutical industry, most industries, commercial industries, have legal liability for what they produce, for what they deliver, the goods and services they deliver. And I'm not equating this to goods and services, but you get the point. When you're a public-facing business or corporation and you have, quote, consumers on the other end, there is liability, there is responsibility involved with operating the business or whatever you're operating. And so the liability avenue is going to ultimately run these pornographic websites out of the states. That's already happening. I don't know how many stories I've seen where some of the largest websites of this material are just shutting down their IP addresses and their operations in multiple states, including Florida, Texas, Louisiana. There's multiple states in which they've just said, we're just not doing business here because legally and financially it's just way too risky. And so they're completely shutting down operations. And so ultimately, if that's the way this is resolved through age verification and legislation, then that's the way to go. And as I mentioned earlier, this notion that the technology isn't there to protect children, that's just a fallacy. That's just a complete fallacy. In the era of some of the most advanced technology in the world and the most advanced software in the world that we've ever known and we've ever seen, to try to tell the public that you can't keep children off your website, that just doesn't hold water. That's just not true. Just not true. It can be done, but there has to be incentive. There has to be a motivation. There has to be a reason. There has to be something to push these websites to prevent children from accessing this terrible, terrible material. And that's what these age verification laws do. And so we've gotten them passed in multiple states, and we will continue until all 50 states have them on the books. And what we're doing here, folks, ultimately is preventing more victims of pornography. That's the goal here. Minimize the number of casualties from the porn industry. We'll be back in a few.
I hope you're sitting down for this. George Barna's Cultural Research Center found only 13% of born-again Christians have a biblical worldview. That means there's a huge lack of biblical life essentials in our country. AFA is committed to helping churches ignite a hunger for God. You can be part of that with your gift today, and we'll send you Dr. Alex McFarland's DVD, Do Christians Have Permission to Edit Scripture? Visit afa.net/biblical. afa.net/biblical.
If we lose this cultural war, we're going to have a hedonistic, humanistic society.
Discover the story of the culture warrior Don Wildmon and how he went head-to-head with Hollywood, Playboy, the homosexual agenda, and the Disney Empire. The movement Don started paved the way for Christians to boldly stand for truth and righteousness in a hostile culture. Watch Culture Warrior today for free. Visit culturewarrior.movie.
If you are 65 or older, you know this. Inflation is hitting everyone hard right now, especially when it comes to healthcare. Over the last 10 years, healthcare costs have skyrocketed by, get this, 230%. If you have Medicare Parts A and B, you know there are still out-of-pocket expenses like deductibles and co-payments, and they really add up. But here's some good news. MediShare 65 Plus is designed to fill in those gaps and help protect you from rising healthcare costs. At only $99 per month up to age 75, you get peace of mind at a price you can afford. And MediShare is trusted, too. It's been around 30 years. It's not some big impersonal thing. It's a community of people helping each other, business owners, pastors, retirees. People love it. MediShare 65 Plus just makes sense. To learn more, give them a call. They're great to talk to. They'll offer to pray with you each time you call, too. Call now, 833-45-BIBLE. That's 833-45-BIBLE, 833-45-BIBLE.
Pilate asked Jesus life's most essential question, what is truth? Some time ago, I interviewed a candidate for public office and asked him to define truth. His answer, I don't know. So I asked, well, how then you make your decisions in office and know you're right? He said, I guess I'll follow my gut. Hello, I'm Sam Rohr with the American Pastors Network and another Stand in the Gap Minute. Truth's not subjective, open for debate or found in the gut. Rejecting Jesus as truth, like Pilate, ensures no moral compass. Rejecting truth results in confusion, moral bankruptcy, bribery, and corruption. Rejecting truth guarantees that no person in office, be they Republican, Democrat, or Independent, can lead with integrity, principle, and consistency, since each desirable character trait hinges on truth as defined by God's Word and modeled by Jesus Christ. This week I'll focus on truth and what the Bible says. Will you join with us at Stand in the Gap Radio and TV and embrace the truth? Sign up and stand with us at AmericanPastorsNetwork.net.
This is At the Core on American Family Radio with your host, Walker Wildmon.
Welcome back to the last segment of today's live program. Walker Wildmon here with you on American Family Radio. Well, a couple housekeeping items that I would like to mention before I forget this show because time is moving quickly. Let's see. Next week is actually over the next 7 days is National Collection Week. Over the next 7 days is National Collection Week for Operation Christmas Child. Now through November 24th is National Collection Week for Operation Christmas Child. You can go over to SamaritansPurse.org/OCC, SamaritansPurse.org/OCC for more information on that. Lastly, our trips to Greece and Israel are coming up in March of 2026. And registration is closing in December. And so if you want to go with us to either Greece or Israel, then you can go over to wildmongroup.com, and we would love to have you join us. Registration closes in December. And so go ahead and check that out if you're interested over at wildmongroup.com. All right, our next guest is Mississippi State Representative Stacey Wilkes, serving District 108 in the Magnolia State. Representative Wilkes is with us now. Representative, welcome to the program.
Thank you. I appreciate y'all having me.
Well, we wanted to have you on to talk about a piece of legislation that you're working on for this upcoming session. And in light of the Charlie Kirk assassination, the question has really come up, what should legislatures do? Should anything be done as far as college campuses, free speech, safety, etc.? And so you're working on something called the Charlie Kirk Campus Free Speech and Safety Act for this upcoming legislative session in Mississippi. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, this is basically the Forum Act, and I've dropped it pretty much every year, just about every year. And but we wanted to name it after Charlie Kirk this year, and we're going to work on a few little changes. But basically, it's protecting free speech on our college campuses. The free speech protects everyone, not just conservatives. But as we know, the conservatives are the ones that have the lack of free speech on our campuses. So it's just important, as we just saw with Charlie Kirk's assassination, that we have you have your First Amendment right, but we need something in our state rights where there's consequences. And also, when you have it in the state rights and it goes to the state courts, it moves a lot faster. Because what we've seen in the past, some of the students, when they would file their suits, by the time they got to them, they were graduated, working in careers and all that. And so that doesn't fix the problem while they're still in school.
Tell us a little bit about maybe some of the issues that are still out there regarding free speech on campuses, because Mississippi has done a kind of a couple different bills over the last, let's say, 5 to 7 years on this subject. But obviously, every piece of legislation doesn't fix every issue. So, give us a couple reasons why this is needed in the future, and not and why some of the legislation in the past maybe doesn't address all the concerns.
Well, times are constantly changing, but and I will say that since I started dropping my bill, and actually in 2020, House Bill 1200 passed through the House. So it failed in the Senate and didn't come out of committee, but we were making progress then. A lot of people just felt that free speech was already protected. There was a lot of, mostly, honestly, with the conservatives that didn't vote for it, or Republicans that didn't vote for it, it was mainly because of pressure from universities and colleges. Now, I will say that things have gotten a little better since that bill, because they changed a bunch of policies and things like that. But I think everything needs to be standard across the board. And so we saw, like, what happened with Charlie Kirk. That shouldn't be happening. I know back in 2020, the Harrison Dawes, who is was the mascot for Colonel Rebel in the suit, they threw him off the campus one time because he was in the suit. Turning Point had issues back then of members of Turning Point then meeting and things like that. And not only with professors saying things to them, but a lot of the students would. And I want to make this point that these liberal professors who are indoctrinating our kids with our own money, most of these professors are from out of state. And a lot of the students they would throw things at conservatives. They would, in our conservative groups, they would spit at them, all kind of stuff. And most of those students that did that were out of state as well. But yet our colleges are encouraging people to come here from out of state. And we keep hiring all these liberal professors that are indoctrinating our kids with our money, all these out of state professors. And I think it's time we make some changes with all that.
Yeah, to your point, I've read recent examples of Turning Point chapters being turned down, not necessarily in Mississippi, but in other states where these schools are just saying, no, you can't have a chapter here, but you can have all these other chapters in these LGBTQ groups. And so, to your point, there needs to be something codified and consistent across the state so that you don't have one school doing this and another school doing that. Also, you
would think it would make easier. The schools have a big pushback on it, but you think it'd make it easier for them, because here's your rules, here's what's acceptable, here's what's not acceptable. And, if they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, like they said they were, then why do you care?
Yeah.
The only time you would care is if you were violating it.
Right. Yeah.
And this, like you said, this pertains to all students. It's not just conservatives. It pertains to everyone. So why would anybody be opposed to it?
Yeah. The only opposition, ultimately, it's because they either don't want to have to answer to anybody, but they want taxpayer dollars.
Yes, they don't want to be told what to do.
But then, secondly, they're liberal. Either the admin or the some of the staff, they're liberal, so they don't want to have to be fair to conservatives. Those are the only viable arguments, and I'm not saying they're viable, but that's the only logical thing that they could do, or say.
But and even if the administration isn't as liberal or whatever, they're the head honcho. It starts at the top with accountability. So they're responsible for these professors and the students that they're allowing to do these things. So, maybe some of those need to go. I don't know, but we got to have some change.
Yeah. One of the parts of your bill from House Bill 1200 that you said had passed the House but wasn't signed by the governor. One of the things it does is it basically gets rid of or rethinks this whole free speech zone, which I've always thought was interesting, how the college can tell you that you can have your First Amendment space over here, but nowhere else can you have your First Amendment space. That was just bizarre to me. And I went to Mississippi State, and it was on the on the kind of the main space where I'll think of the name of it in a minute. But they had this like little corner where you could protest, like, but you can't. And I say protest, it wasn't really even a protest. You can have your event here and have your First Amendment here, but if you move 100 yards over here, then you don't have your First Amendment.
Yeah, I don't remember anything in the First Amendment that said it was limited to a corner.
Right.
Yeah.
Duly noted. That was your mic drop moment. How do you think this will fare in the Senate? Because, the Senate, you've got to get it through the state Senate. Number one, do you think you got the votes in the House? And then what do you think about the Senate?
I don't know. We go back to session in January, so we'll start discussing it and see. But I would think after the Charlie Kirk assassination and the different things that have happened, I don't see how the Republicans can vote against it. And like I said, if the schools are doing what they're supposed to do, they shouldn't have a problem with it.
Yeah.
And it's standard across the board, and what what it says, and it's just not that difficult. So I'm hoping that we have. I think it's a good year for it with everything that happened to Charlie, and the silent majority, is awake. They woke the sleeping giant. People are getting more engaged. People are really looking at things differently since Charlie Kirk's assassination. And that's a good thing, because honestly, we've allowed this. We have sat back and been quiet and gradually let them take away our rights, to have the same thoughts and speech that the liberals have. And we've let them chop it and chop it and chop it. And so it's time to start standing up and saying, we're not going to force you to believe anything or think anything, but we have the right to believe and think what we want to without being punished or spit on or anything like that.
Yeah, the name of the location in Strawful was the drill field right there, kind of the central campus by Lee Hall and the Union, etc. That was kind of the place to protest. But if you moved outside of your little block that you had, then you were in violation, and they would pull your permit and tell you can't protest.
Doesn't that remind you of like when you were in school, when you were young, and they draw a little box and they don't step out of the box, you're in timeout.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, hey, Representative Wilkes, we appreciate your work. We'll keep tracking the progress here in this upcoming session, and we appreciate all you do.
Okay. Can I make one more comment?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, sure. Okay, thank you. I just recently signed a contract with Super Talk Mississippi for a weekly hour-long podcast, and it's called Faith, Family in Mississippi. And I will be contacting y'all because I'm going to be doing an episode on free speech. So I'll be getting with y'all and some others, and we'll have talk about episodes on the campuses, more specifically, more details on the legislation and things like that.
Excellent. Congratulations on that.
Thank
and
you.
We
I'm
wish you
super
the best.
excited.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great. Well,
Thank y'all for having me on.
Yeah, we'll be glad to come on and chat with you, Jameson and I, on your podcast.
Good. I'd love that.
All right. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you so much. You too.
Absolutely. That's Representative Stacey Wilkes out of Mississippi, State Rep District 108 is the area that she serves. And a good conversation about free speech on college campuses. A couple more clips I want to get to when we have time. The President Trump has, well, and these are in my words, has stopped the bleeding on the economy. That's kind of the best way I can describe this. President Trump has stopped the bleeding, stopped the bad on the economy, but getting us back to where we were or making continual improvements, the time just hasn't been there. We're under the 12-month mark for the administration, and we all know how slow government moves. I want to play a clip here of National Economic Advisor Kevin Hassett talking about how President Trump has been able to basically flatline all the metrics on the economy to where they don't worsen, but it's going to take more time to actually see improvements from where we were before Joe Biden. Clip 2.
Right. Well, I mean, for sure, people still are trying to dig out from the big hole that was dug by the previous administration's policies. So if you figure the typical mortgage payment, monthly mortgage payment about doubled. If you look at a typical bag of groceries, the monthly bag of groceries cost about $400 when President Trump was leaving office last time, and about $512 right about when President Trump took office. And since then, it's gone up almost not at all. I think it's like $515, but it hasn't gone back to $400. And so what the Democrats are doing is they're saying that this runaway spending that we gave you guys that created runaway inflation is 100% your fault. Because you haven't fixed it already. And of course, that's very economically illiterate, and I don't think really many people in markets are buying it.
Well, there you have it. That pretty much sums up where we are. And I do appreciate the honesty and the transparency from Kevin Hassett, because what he's saying there is what we all know to be true, and that is that, yeah, okay, President Trump has stopped the bleeding. He has basically stopped the more bad from happening. But we're nowhere near where we were before COVID, before the damage began, before the damage started. And some people who are a little more pessimistic than me will say we'll never get there. We'll never go back to where we were before COVID when it comes to wage growth, affordability of housing, etc., cost of living. And I think saying never is a long shot. Anytime people say never to me, always a red flag goes up, because Scripture says, "Who knows the future?" And things change in our country. So to say never, I'm not sure that's wise. Just like on the mortgage rates, I've heard people say, "Oh, they'll never go back to 3%." I think they will. I think they will. We're in an economy that thrives on, has to have low rates. Because of the modern monetary theory that we're operating under and the deficit cycle that we're operating under. So I think mortgage rates actually will go back to 3%, 3.5%. Is it going to happen next year? Probably not. It actually won't happen next year. I would almost guarantee it. That would be way too much of a rate cut cycle unless we go into some kind of major economic turmoil. But things could the metrics could go back to pre-COVID. Now, you're not going to have deflation, and this is what we have to understand here, is that slowing inflation is simply is not deflation, and there's a difference between lowering the inflation rate to like 2%, for example, but it's almost impossible, barring some economic disaster, to have true deflation for any extended amount of time, where, for example, the price of groceries goes back to 2019. That just doesn't happen, once again, barring some major economic disaster, which we don't want to wish that on anybody. But what you can do to improve things and to get things back to where they were, generally speaking, is you have to have wage growth. And you have to lower inflation. You have to have inflation below 2%, and you have to have wage growth outpace inflation year over year for multiple years to get people back to a place where they can afford things like before COVID. That's pretty much where we are. The point is, it takes time. We'll see you next time.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.